Welcome to our video on Spanish indirect object pronouns.
Hola a todos.
If you're learning Spanish, you might have come across these little words before, but you might not know exactly what they are or how to use them. Don't worry, though, because in this video we're going to explain everything you need to know about Spanish indirect object pronouns. What are indirect object pronouns? First of all, let's start with the basics. In Spanish, an indirect object is a person or thing that receives the action of a verb, but not directly. For example, in the sentence, I gave Juan the book, the direct object is the book, because it's what I gave. But the indirect object is Juan, because he's the one who received the book. Now, in Spanish, when we want to replace the indirect object with a pronoun, we use what's called an indirect object pronoun. These pronouns are
Me,
to me or for me,
te,
to you or for you,
le,
to him, to her, to you or for him, for her, or for you in a formal situation,
nos,
to us or for us,
os,
to you or for you when the object is plural,
les,
to them or for them, to you or for you in a formal and plural situation. So, going back to our example sentence, if we wanted to replace Juan with an indirect object pronoun, we could say,
le di el libro,
I gave him the book, using the pronoun
le,
instead of the name Juan. Now that we know what indirect object pronouns are, let's talk about when we use them. In Spanish, we use indirect object pronouns in a few different situations. One common situation is when we want to avoid repeating the indirect object. For example, instead of saying,
yo le di el libro a Juan, y después le di el libro a María.
I gave the book to Juan, and then I gave the book to Maria, we could say,
Yo le di el libro a Juan, y después le di a María.
I gave the book to Juan, and then I gave it to Maria, using the indirect object pronoun,
Le,
to avoid repeating.
el libro.
Another situation where we use indirect object pronouns is when the indirect object comes before the verb. For example, instead of saying,
Yo di el libro a Juan.
I gave the book to Juan, we would say,
Yo le di el libro a Juan.
using the pronoun,
Le,
to indicate that Juan is the indirect object. We also use indirect object pronouns with certain verbs that always take an indirect object. Some examples of these verbs are
gustar,
to like,
encantar,
to love, and
importar.
to matter. For example, instead of saying,
A Juan le gusta el libro.
Juan likes the book, we would say,
A Juan le gusta.
Juan likes it, using the pronoun
Le,
to refer to.
el libro.
Now, let's talk about where we put indirect object pronouns in a sentence. In general, we place the pronoun before the verb. For example, instead of saying,
Yo di el libro a Juan.
we would say,
Yo le di el libro a Juan.
with the pronoun
Le,
before the verb.
di.
However, there are a few situations where the placement of the pronoun changes. For example, if the verb is in the infinitive form, we can either place the pronoun before the conjugated verb or attach it to the end of the infinitive. For example, instead of saying,
Yo voy a le dar el libro a Juan.
I am going to give the book to Juan, we could say,
Le voy a dar el libro a Juan.
or
Yo voy a darle el libro a Juan.
both of which are correct. If the verb is in the present participle form, we can either place the pronoun before the participle or attach it to the end of the participle. For example, instead of saying,
Yo estoy dando el libro a Juan.
I am giving the book to Juan, we could say,
Yo estoy le dando el libro a Juan.
or
Yo estoy dándole el libro a Juan.
if the verb is in the imperative form, we attach the pronoun to the end of the verb. For example, instead of saying,
Dale el libro a Juan.
give the book to Juan, we would say,
Dale el libro.
or
Dáselo.
give it to him. Now, let's look at some examples of sentences with indirect object pronouns.
¿Le das el regalo a tu hermana?
Are you giving the gift to your sister?
¿Le das el regalo a tu hermana? ¿Le das el regalo a tu hermana?
Are you giving the gift to your sister?
Sí, le voy a dar el regalo.
Yes, I am going to give her the gift.
Sí, le voy a dar el regalo. Sí, le voy a dar el regalo.
Yes, I am going to give her the gift.
Me gusta el helado de chocolate.
I like chocolate ice cream.
Me gusta el helado de chocolate. Me gusta el helado de chocolate.
I like chocolate ice cream.
A mí también me gusta.
I like it too.
A mí también me gusta. A mí también me gusta.
I like it too.
¿Les importa si fumamos aquí?
Do you mind if we smoke here?
¿Les importa si fumamos aquí? ¿Les importa si fumamos aquí?
Do you mind if we smoke here?
Sí, nos importa.
Yes, we mind.
Sí, nos importa. Sí, nos importa.
Yes, we mind.
Le dije la verdad a mi jefe.
I told my boss the truth.
Le dije la verdad a mi jefe. Le dije la verdad a mi jefe.
I told my boss the truth.
¿Le dijiste la verdad?
Did you tell him the truth?
¿Le dijiste la verdad? ¿Le dijiste la verdad?
Did you tell him the truth?
No, no le dije nada.
No, I didn't tell him anything.
No, no le dije nada. No, no le dije nada.
No, I didn't tell him anything. As you can see, the indirect object pronouns replace the indirect object in the sentence, making it more concise and easier to understand. And that's it. Now you know what Spanish indirect object pronouns are and how to use them. Remember to use them when you want to avoid repeating the indirect object, when the indirect object comes before the verb, or with certain verbs that always take an indirect object. And don't forget about the different placement rules depending on the form of the verb. With a little practice, you'll be using indirect object pronouns like a pro in no time. Thank you for watching this tutorial on the Spanish indirect object pronouns. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Your support means a lot to us and helps our channel grow. We would also love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment down below and let us know what you thought of this video. We're always looking for ways to improve and create content that you love, so your feedback is greatly appreciated. Once again, thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next one.
Hasta luego.